What will the Mariners lineup look like with JP Crawford back in the fold? Why do Astros fans hate Scott Servais so much? And who are the top 5 relievers in Seattle's bullpen? We'll answer that and more here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, August 21st, 2023. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. If you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And this episode is, of course, Mailbag Monday, the show where we answer your Mariners questions. But before we get into your questions, quick shout out to you guys, because you guys have absolutely crushed it the last couple of days. We have now surpassed Locked On Astros to become the most subscribed to MLB show on the Locked On Network on YouTube. So thank you from the bottom of both Colby and I's hearts. We really, really appreciate the support. We started this YouTube channel not even 2 years ago. And to see how far we've taken this thing, and most importantly, how far you guys have taken this thing, is really freaking cool. Colby, you got anything you want to say to our listeners?
No, just thank you for subscribing and all that. Thank you for listening and sharing and downloading. It all truly helps. It's been an interesting last 72 hours, both with what's happened on the field and a little bit with what's happened off. Some of you guys may or may not know what that's about, but so it's been fun to see the channel grow, really as exponentially as it has. So thank you. If you're not subscribed, please do. Like I said, it helps a lot. And again, just thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming on this journey with us. And hopefully it ends with the Mariners in the playoffs for the second straight year.
So the next goal for us, 9,000 subscribers. We'd love to get to 10K. So let's continue. Keep subscribing. Keep telling people that you know that are Mariners fans to subscribe to our channel. Just hit that button below our faces. We greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. All right, let's get into these questions here. We're going to start with Max, who asked, what would your lineup be when JP returns? Also, yeah, you're damn right. We just swept the Astros. That's right, Max. We just did. So JP's coming back tonight. I don't know if they've officially announced that yet, but we saw him getting on a plane. Okay, cool. So JP's back. How would you like to see the Mariners and Scott Servais specifically handle this lineup starting tonight? Because there's a lot of creative ways you can go about this. Obviously, the offense is playing the best it has all year lately. For me personally, it doesn't really matter at the top, like 1, 2, that's going to be JP and Julio. And then once you get to 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think that's where you can really get creative with it. There's a bunch of ways that you can go about it. You go France 3, Gino 4. You could go Gino 3, Cal 4, Ty 5, Teo 6, or flip Teo and Ty. Like, how would you like to see that handled?
I think that I would probably for the moment, you kind of play a little bit of hot hand. You kind of play matchup too. So I think for the moment, Teoscar would probably be my third hitter. He's on a bit of a heater right now, and then probably Cal, and then Gino, and then France. I think is probably how I would work them. But that's the top 6, and then 7, 8, 9 is whoever's playing left, whoever's playing DH or right. And then the second baseman. I think it'd probably be something JP, Julio, Teoscar, Cal, Gino, France, Marlowe. What would it be? Marlowe, Canzone, Rojas?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I'd probably I mean, you're right, because I mean Teo's been one of the hottest hitters in baseball. I mean, that's obviously gotten overshadowed by Julio's historic stretch. We talked about this a couple of nights ago, but Teo's been one of the best hitters in baseball this month. So again, I feel like there aren't really a ton of wrong answers here because so many guys in your lineup are hot right now. I kind of want Cal, at least against righties. I kind of want Cal in the top 4. So find a way to get Cal in your top 4, preferably hitting 4, and then whoever hits 3, whether that's Gino, whether that's Teo, whether that's Ty, doesn't really matter to me. And then right now, I think I just go back to the way things were pre JP injury and just have JP hit 1 and then Julio hit 2. But again, it doesn't really matter to me because all these guys are hot right now. So again, I'm not gonna have too much of an issue with it. All right, next question here comes from AZ. Even with the Mariners red hot, do you think we shouldn't excuse Dipoto and Hollander's trade deadline and offseason? I have a bad feeling this recent success is going to justify Dipoto's choices for the future. All right, Colby, it's time to relitigate the trade deadline and what the Mariners did at the trade deadline, or rather did not do at the trade deadline. So do you think the Mariners' recent hot stretch lets Dipoto and Hollander off the hook?
Only if you're stupid.
Okay.
Because you've watched these 6 games and you haven't thought like, boy, the Mariners sure could use another starting pitcher. Boy, the Mariners sure could use some more bullpen help. Boy, the Mariners sure could use, not Mike Ford in the lineup every day. You really watch these games and those were the first things that popped into your head?
Yeah.
Of course it doesn't excuse it. Good results doesn't excuse poor process. And when you're the front office, the only thing I care about is the process. The process was bad. And once again, let's not get this twisted. This is never about the Paul Sewald trade. Ty and I both like the Paul Sewald trade in a vacuum. That is not the way you operate. You do not operate in a vacuum. The issue wasn't that they traded Paul Sewald, although I'm not a huge fan of that. It's that they didn't replace him. And it's that they didn't protect themselves in case Canzone and Rojas were, going to be bums. And frankly, they've both been about league average hitters. But
Canzone has a 106 WRC plus. Rojas has a 77 WRC plus.
Right. And Canzone's 106 is greatly influenced by his 4-for-5 night yesterday. So they've both been okay. And Rojas has certainly looked better lately, but they're not the reason that you won 14 of 17. Right. Yep. They've helped. Sure. They have. But have they helped more than having Paul Sewald would? Debatable. Maybe not. Who knows? That's not really the point, though. The point is that they didn't do enough. It's not what they did was bad. It's that they didn't do enough to protect themselves. And now, by the way, you have Emerson Hancock going on the 15-day IL. Boy, how much would Rich Hill have cost you, to keep your 6-man rotation intact and all that stuff? So, no, it doesn't excuse it. It was still a terrible process. And they don't get credit for fixing the Mariners by trading Paul Sewald. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, at the height of my emotions during that post-deadline show we did, I didn't word this incredibly well, but whatever the Mariners do from here on out, even if they make a deep run in the postseason, doesn't retroactively make the process of the deadline good, right? If the Mariners go on and do some real damage here, they're going to do that in spite of the process at the deadline rather than because of the process at the deadline. And again, we said at the, right after the deadline during that show, even at the height of our emotions, that like we're open-minded to the possibility that Canzone and Rojas can help the rest of the way, that they could be more valuable for you than Paul Sewald could be the rest of the way. But it's not a great bet. And it's still not a great bet because Canzone, just after yesterday, is a league average hitter since the deadline, and Rojas is 23% below league average since the deadline. So, yeah, I mean, they've helped in some ways here over the course of this hot stretch, but they haven't been the reason for that. And you've also had some bullpen issues. Obviously, the bullpen for the most part has been nails, but the bullpen has been nails in spite of what happened at the deadline, not because of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, just by happenstance. Today, Cal Raleigh said on the radio, if I'm being honest, I don't think it was a real popular move. Paul did a lot for this team and this org. So, the clubhouse hated it too. But I bet
Cal's
that
been
would've-
very outspoken about
yes,
the deadline.
I mean, everybody has. Everybody has. And again, we're not going to relitigate this because we got to go. But is there maybe some tension between Jerry and Scott because Scott couldn't be happy, and when the players are mad, who are they going to go yell at? Not Jerry. They're going to go talk to Scott. So,
right.
No, the front office totally butchered the deadline. The Mariners could win 50 in a row, and they still would have butchered the deadline. Doesn't mean that we care about that at this stage, but it's a fact. Like, it doesn't matter. After the fact, they butchered the trade deadline for the 2023 Mariners. The deals they made were not to help this ball club make the playoffs. It was to help next year's ball club make the playoffs. And that's what
how do we maximize the value of the return of Paul Sewald? That's what that trade was about. That's what the whole deadline was about. And Ryan Divish confirmed that they were close to trading Teoscar Hernandez for Austin Shenton, who Shenton would probably make the big league club, but there's no guarantee that he helps you at all in 2023. And, Teo has been, again, one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball since the deadline. So that would have hurt you even further. That would have hurt your 2023 ball club even further. So,
it's funny. You remember what I said after the Diamondbacks series? So it feels like Seattle's front office wanted the Mariners to get swept so that they could justify selling. And it looks like they were just going to do that either way because they were ready to pull the trigger on Teo. They obviously pulled the trigger on Paul. So they were clearly willing to do that. And it looks like that was their plan. So no, you don't get credit for making the right moves at the deadline just because the team is winning. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And like Mark Canha hasn't really panned out so far. I mean, that was one of the guys that we really pounded the table for. Randall Grichuk, CJ Cron, those guys haven't really panned out, but Tommy Pham's a 109 WRC plus. Jeimer Candelario's a 151 WRC plus since the deadline. Like, there was help that you could go out and get that is, better than some of the pieces that you have on your roster right now. Also, like another thing too, from a bullpen perspective, I mean, I know not a ton of relievers got dealt at the deadline, not a ton of at least like, leverage guys, right? Higher leverage guys, right? Because I wouldn't consider like Andrew Chafin to be a high leverage guy, but
pretty good.
Yeah, but he's pretty good. Like you could have gotten Andrew Chafin, like for what the Brewers paid for him.
Forget like there weren't many high leverage guys available. You're giving Trent Thornton high leverage spots right now.
Yeah,
come on.
And like I think Chafin's been kind of rough since going over to the Brewers. I'm not entirely sure on that.
I don't really
but
care.
Again, the process, right? It's about the process. It's about trying to make your 2023 ball club better with pieces that were good at the time of the deadline, rather than banking on a dude with 15 games under his belt at the major league level, and then Rojas, who's been hurt and was hitting for like a 68 WRC plus heading into the deadline. Like, again, like that deal is fine in a vacuum, but you needed to protect yourself a bit more, and you needed to support your ball club a bit more. Anyway, we've run way over time here for the first segment, so we're going to answer more of your questions in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. You can catch the Mariners and the White Sox starting tonight and over the course of the next 3 days on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. The return of JP Crawford tonight. You said that the Mariners officially announced that he's back. What was the corresponding move? I didn't see that.
Haggerty sent down.
Ooh, wow. So they did keep Mike Ford.
Yep. Hancock to the IL. Darren McCacken up.
Well, shout out to the Darren McCacken enjoyer. I know we're gonna get the whole "we love Darren McCacken" comments and below this video. I know,
We'll see.
enjoy your time in the sun for the next day.
Yeah,
until
they send him back down for Brian
until
Wu.
until they send him back down for Brian Wu tomorrow. Yep. But enjoy it while it lasts. Have your fun. It's all good. All right, let's get back into these questions. Jake wants to know, I know it's early for this, but when do we start talking about the magic number? Like at the earliest 2 weeks to go?
I say when it's below 10.
Yeah.
Magic number is not really a thing. I know that Bob Nightingale tries to make it a thing as early as like June, but no, it's not.
Sure. Yeah.
Wake me up when it gets under 10. Then I'll care about the magic number.
Yeah. Again, like the earliest we can start looking at that is maybe 2 weeks, but probably even later than that. Especially with like the current playoff race right now, with all these teams being so close to one another. Because I mean, one of these teams, the Mariners, the Astros, the Blue Jays, one of them are not making it. So
unless Tampa or Texas collapses.
Yeah, Tampa I could maybe buy because they're just so banged up. But
it's such a
they still have so many wins banked. Same with the Rangers. Like the Rangers might not win the division, but the Rangers still have so many wins banked that I can't imagine them completely falling out of it. So yeah. Mike wants to know, why do Astros fans hate Servais so much? Did something happen during his playing days there? No, they just want to distract from how garbage their organization is and vilify someone else. It's Scott Servais is the shiny jingling keys, right? Like, ooh, look over here. Look how bad he is, right? No, that's what it is.
Yeah, which doesn't even make sense because, like, if you're gonna be like Scott Servais starts the fights and all that stuff, like you can't have like a 15-3 hit by pitch differential, and then blame the guy the manager of the team that's hit 3 guys while treating the guy who's hit 15 like he's a saint. So no.
Well, he always complains to the umpires. So does every manager in Major League Baseball.
What are you new?
Newsflash.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Dusty's too lazy to get off his butt without his walker and roll his way up to home plate to yell at somebody, but deal with it. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's insecurities at the end of the day is what it is.
Yeah.
Insecurity because they know that the run is about to end, and it's probably going to end at the hands of the Seattle Mariners.
Next question here comes from Nick. Do you think the combo of Marlowe, Canzone showing they can play at the major league level reduces the chance they bring Teo back next season? I think even without the presence of those guys, the chances of Teo coming back is fairly low. I mean, we don't know, right? We don't know what the relationship is between organization and player, but again, they seemed like they were pretty close to trading him if the Rays said yes on Austin Shenton. So it doesn't seem like they're super committed to Teo. Maybe they like him, and obviously he's hitting a lot better, but he also needs to sustain this, right? Because if not, he's going to go into free agency heading into his age 31 season and coming off of his worst season in like 5 years. Like it's gonna, like, to me, Teo right now, even with what he's done the last couple weeks, he's probably on track to just get a 1-year prove it deal in free agency. I mean, maybe with how bad the market is going to be position player wise, maybe there's a team out there that will give him a multi-year deal, but I kind of feel like he's going to end up finding that elsewhere.
Yeah, maybe he gets the Conforto deal, which is like 1 and 17 with an option. But I think if the Mariners offered him the qualifying offer right now, he would take it. So that kind of begs the question, do the Mariners want him to take the qualifying offer?
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too, Ray, is like we've always talked about Teo, for the last few months, we've talked about Teo's qualifying offer is just like, yeah, that's going to happen. Like that's a sure thing. But now, I mean, again, like he's going to have to hit the way that, maybe not to this degree, but he's going to have to hit a lot better than he has for most of the year, the rest of the way, for me to really consider that, because I like the bet overall, like on betting on Teo to bounce back and be the guy that he's been for the last 4 years before next year. But just based off of the season that he's having right now, $20 million for that guy is a lot. And we know that John Stanton's not going to just open up the checkbook for Jerry Dipoto. So like if Jerry, like in theory, if Jerry spends $20 million on Teo, is Stanton going to say like, all right, well, that's it. You've spent your money this offseason? Because like that's not good enough.
Right. I mean, that'd only be $6 million more than Teo's making this year, but yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder maybe there's
but also you got ARB guys who are going to make more,
right.
you know, et cetera.
Yeah. I do wonder if maybe there's a surprise extension coming in the next month or so.
Sure.
Just, you know, if Teo likes it here and he seems to, and the clubhouse seems to like him in general, maybe there's like a 1 at like 18 extension, and then you can, you know, the Mariners can save a little bit on the qualifying offer, and Teo, you know, gets roughly the deal he'd probably get with a QO attached to him in free agency. So, yeah, we'll see. It's a tricky free agent class, and Teoscar finishes out the year as like, you know, from now until the end of the year, if he's like a 130, 135 WRC plus bat, then I think we have a real conversation. If he's just a, you know, what he's been most of the year, which is like a 104 WRC plus guy, you're probably moving on. I don't think Marlowe and Canzone have a whole lot to do with that decision.
Right.
But
I mean, having depth helps, but you should go out in the offseason and look to get better. And that's probably going to be via the trade market.
Mm-hmm. The Mariners shouldn't go into this winter and be like, we don't need to add an outfielder because we have Marlowe and Canzone. That is a loser. Right. Perspective to have. And they might have it. Like, I can't rule it out, unfortunately.
Next question here comes from Jake. With the 6-man rotation likely being off the table now, how would you go about writing out this rotation the rest of the way? Which would be 7 starts a piece, give or take. Could a 5-man rotation work the rest of the way? It's all dependent on Woo's health. How and his innings limit, right? And our pitch limit, more accurately, right? Now this could have been a phantom IL stent for all we know, and I kind of suspect that it was, to be honest with you. So maybe the Mariners have already given him that break that he needed over the last couple weeks, and he's just good to go for the rest of the season until they're ultimately gonna, you know, put him in the bullpen for October. But yeah, it really does all come down to that. If he's only able to, you know, if you only feel like he can give you just 3 to 4, maybe 5 innings a night, or more accurately, like 70 to 80 pitches a night rather than 90 to 100, then yeah, you're probably talking about Tommy Malone's going to have to be a factor at some point. Adam Oller, Logan Allen, Darren McCacken, even one of those guys is probably going to pitch for you at some point down the stretch here. But like we talked about the other day, I'm totally fine with a 5-man rotation. Like I would prefer that, because you're not taking starts out of the hands of George Kirby and Luis Castillo and Logan Gilbert. So yeah, how do you think it all works out, Colby?
I think that the Mariners, even though they gave him the 2 weeks off, I think they obviously, since they were still planning on going to 6-man, they think he needs a few more breaks, or, you know, and we don't know if it would have been a true 6-man or if there would have been a piggyback option or anything like that. So I feel like they still think he needs another break at some point, but I don't know who the number 6 is. Like, are you going to give Darren McCacken starts in a playoff race? God, I hope not. Are you going to give, you know, Tommy Malone starts in a playoff race? I mean, I surely hope so, or I surely hope not. Like, what are you going to do? Who is the 6th guy? I didn't like giving Emerson Hancock starts in a playoff race, and he's better than those 2 guys. So I think maybe what they do instead is we kind of see this piggyback short script start coming up. So I wouldn't be too surprised if, you know, Bizzardo gets sent down and they call up Adam Oller, who's stretched out and ready to go into Coma, and Woo goes 3, and then Oller goes 3 or 4. So I think maybe that is how they'll go about this, instead of just, you know, tacking a guy onto the end. At least I hope, because I feel like the piggyback thing can still work, or it would work better than just giving the ball to Tommy Malone every 6 days for 3 weeks.
Yes. Agreed. All right, next question here comes from Lynette. With recent success with the current lineup, could JP and Kelnick be replacing integral parts of what seems to be working for the offensive lineup in this very tight division race? And also, how would you rate Servais's handling of the bullpen on Sunday after Hancock's quick exit? So the second part of that question, to answer that real quick, like we said on the show yesterday, 80 grade, no notes. Perfect handling of the bullpen by Scott Servais. One of the most well-maneuvered games by Servais and company that I can possibly remember. As for the first part of the question, no, at least as far as JP goes. I mean, JP was your best hitter before, Julio became the best hitter on planet Earth, right? So yeah, no, JP gives you a major upgrade, even though that Demo and Caballero handled the offensive side of things very well and pretty much replaced JP's offense through that, 2 weeks that JP was gone. You're still getting a hell of a lot better on that front. Kelnick, I mean, we got to see, right? We got to see how much he's going to be able to play. We got to see if he's going to be able to play in the field, because that's obviously going to impact your lineup and how you're able to construct that, and might limit you if you can only DH Jared. But at the end of the day, this makes you deeper, right? And that's never a bad thing. That's a great thing if you're getting deeper, and if guys like Dom Canzone and Dylan Moore and Cade Marlowe even are more so coming off the bench for you, right? You're in a great spot. You're in one of the best spots roster-wise that you've been in a very long time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in Caballero in particular, probably platoons now with Rojas pretty much straight up, and I imagine Dylan Moore is in the outfield against most lefties for either Canzone or Marlowe, or maybe even shortstop. I mean, JP has played a lot of baseball over the last 5 years, and we know that he has had a tendency to kind of wear down throughout the season because the team just hasn't had a viable shortstop option. And so, either one of those guys in theory can play shortstop. I know there were some rough moments with both of them defensively, but they're supposed to be at least, average there. So I think you feel okay about giving JP a day off here and there down the stretch, where you otherwise might not have. But yeah, you want to still try and keep Caballero and Demo's bat in the lineup to some extent. But you do have the DH that is open. Currently, you're giving a lot of those at-bats to Mike Ford. You do have, second base is not Rojas has looked better as of late, but he hasn't locked down that position by any stretch, particularly defensively. So, I still think there's going to be plenty of at-bats. And like I said, I think against lefties, the Mariners have pretty much made that very clear that Rojas is going to find the bench against a lefty. And I imagine Caballero gets most of those starts at second base, and Dylan, because of his experience in the outfield, he probably plays for Marlowe or Canzone in left field against most lefties down the stretch. So I don't confuse a hot stretch for a season worth of production. Like JP has been significantly better than Dylan Moore and Jose Caballero this year. So no, getting him back is not replacing a key cog in the lineup. It's replacing somebody who's done a good job of helping you manage that unfortunate situation. So I still think that both Marlowe it's not as hard to get Marlowe, Canzone, Rojas, Moore, and Caballero enough at bats to still have their impact felt in games. It's not as hard as it sounds.
Right. Final question of the day comes from Chris. What is your 1 through 5 ranking so far of the M's relievers? So at the top for me, it's still Munoz
Thornton.
And Brash.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, Thornton. Yeah. It's still Munoz and Brash. Those are your two best guys. I wouldn't really argue with you based on like who you have 1 and 2. I trust Munoz more, even though that he's been a little shaky lately. Brash is just again
turned on his Canadian brother.
I love Matt Brash. Don't get me wrong.
Apparently not.
But also he terrifies me. He
He's
Also,
been good pretty much every time out for the last 3 months, except for one time in Kansas City.
he still terrifies me. He still terrifies me.
It's pretty good.
He really is. No, don't get me wrong. Very good. Very, very, very,
Turn
very,
on
very
your
good. But he terrifies me. He scares me.
Oak brother or whatever. Isn't that where he's from?
Yeah. Number 3 for me, Topa. I think that's pretty clear. And then Spire 4, and then yesterday, notwithstanding, Saucedo 5.
Yeah, Brash, Munoz, Topa, Spire, Saucedo.
Okay, you got Brash 1
Easily.
Wow.
Yes.
Damn. All right. I guess you're the Matt Brash super fan now, not me. Apparently, I hate Matt Brash.
It's been well established.
Yeah, clearly. He just, I mean, his stuff is so nasty, and he can just be elite, like literally best reliever in baseball when he's on. But boy, is it a ride! It is one hell of a ride sometimes. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. Anything else you want to add before we get on out of here? This has been kind of a laggy show. I don't know if that's going to turn out that way on the actual
let's get out of here.
Downloaded video. But yeah, okay, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.